Easy work for Pitbull Cruz.
Whew.
Easy
Straight
work.
easy work. Wow.
Javante Davis punched all the steam out of Rolly Romero. If you notice, Rolly used to be an action fighter. Javante Davis punched him, dropped him through the ropes. Rolly came back his next two fights. Now he's a boxer. I don't know what the hell Rolly is doing. So for me, I feel like Pitbull will apply too much pressure. And we already know Pitbull got a chin because Javante Davis punched him in his chin 15 times clean, and he didn't go nowhere. So I don't even think there's a chance that Rolly is going to get that kid out of there. That kid's he's action packed, and Rolly is not a skillful fighter. He's a puncher. But let's be for real. Rolly just lost to that Mexican guy that's 111 years old in boxing years, man. And it
Barroso,
and they
Barroso, yeah.
Yeah, from Venezuela.
Barroso.
Yeah.
Yes, they over Venezuelan guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
they robbed that guy. That guy worked Rolly out. I'm talking about a Jane Fonda workout, a good old Jane Fonda workout. Worked him out, and they robbed that guy. So to come back and fight Pitbull, I don't think Rolly really stands a chance. He's not the same Rolly after Javante Davis punched the steam out of him.
It's gonna be a interesting night. Immortal, what do you make of the co-main event? Do you think it can steal the
I
spotlight?
think this is going to be a great fight. I don't think it'll be as one-sided as Mr. Gillie does, but I think that what's interesting is that him switching back to the Cuban trainer takes us to what the champ was saying before. If you're going to go with a more Cuban style of boxing and keeping a person on the outside where you can kind of pick the shots, you're looking for the top of the skull. You're looking for the weak points in a person's anatomy. You know what I mean? And again, in order to implement that, he would have to go back to the boxing fundamentals that comes from like Cuba's program, that old USSR style of boxing that dominated the heavyweight division during the 90s and excuse me, the 90s and the early 2000s. But I think that what you said earlier about this being potentially the show stealer is if it is a close fight and they do go to distance. I think what's interesting is that um, I don't know how many more fights because I don't think that Pitbull has a long history at 140. I think if anything, this is his first or second fight at that particular weight. What that means for a fighter depends on the fighter. You know, I've read the backstory of Mr. Cruz. This is a person that's fighting for something much different than Mr. Romero. I give Mr. Romero a more credit, obviously, than Gillie does for his skills, but I think that Mr. Cruz is Isaac Pitbull Cruz. His momentum to want to win this is, I think, elevated to a different level. He's coming from a place where there's extreme poverty that he's trying to escape. Not saying that Rolly didn't have no drama coming to this country, his family being Cuban immigrants, people going through that whatever struggle they have to. But for a person, when I watched the prologue where he says, "Listen, I didn't have but a tortilla to give my family. I was dead broke. We were living off nothing. You know, my wife almost had to go out begging in the streets for me to feed my children." He's a person that's fighting for life. They're not fighting for just glory. They're not fighting for, oh yeah, I want to take pictures with celebrities in the belt. Isaac Cruz strikes me as the person that sure he'll dabble in that world, but he's here to fight to feed his family. Here's the buck stops with this fight. If he loses this fight, he has to go back to the bottom of the totem pole and fight his way back up, maybe at 135 even. And I think that what's great about that fight is it is a little bit of make or break for the two of them. You know, Rolly is coming off of, as Mr. Gillie brought up, a very questionable win, which a lot of fans were pouring onto in terms of the Ismael Barros fight. But also in terms of the Tank fight, um, I don't think a person can take a beating like that and not learn something from it, unless they're so damaged by the knockout that they've lost sense of what's going on. So I think
But we
obviously
can agree. Can we agree that since the Tank fight, his whole style has switched up?
I think that's from him going
Yeah.
back to plus. I think you're right. He has to go back to a Cuban boxing style. He switched trainers. So every time somebody switched trainers, Gillie, of course their style's going to change. Like if I'm in with somebody and all of a sudden I'm in with somebody else and they telling me, like for example, Ryan Garcia's style switched when he went to Derek James. It didn't change by that much, but it changed in terms of some of the fundamentals. We saw more footwork instead of that flat-footed nonsense he came out and got destroyed by Tankwith. But at the same time, you did see some things that obviously can't be changed overnight in a fighter, Gillie. You're right about that. But at the same time, going to a different trainer is going to bring out something different in you. If that is him coming from the outside, I think he has a better chance than standing and banging with him. But I think he does hit hard for a 140 pounder. And I think the other difference is that I could see Mr. Romero rehydrating about 15, 17 pounds on fight night. I don't know what Pitbull is going to come in. If he was moving up to 140 from 130 in the 135 division, then I don't see him coming up more than 5, 10 pounds. So we're going to see Romero with the obvious weight advantage of almost 10 pounds, which is basically putting him in another weight class and then some. So I think he's going to have the advantage for that. But to your point, yeah, I think sure, I think a person who takes a loss has to come back mentally before they can obviously come back physically. How that will play into the fight, we're gonna have to see, because it was it a mental boost winning a 140-pound belt with everybody yelling at you and crying foul? No, but at least he had the I think this is why this fight is important for him, because you had so many people saying negative things about that fight with Ismail, that him fighting Pitbull. And him, how about this, Gilly? Even if he lose, but he go to distance, people will give him his respect. They'll say, okay, whatever happened with that old man was a fluke because you went the distance with Pitbull Cruz. So if that's the case, I think it'll put him in a position that even if he lose the fights, he'll have more opportunities. And as we all know, because we got people that don't just do the business of the fight, not just the fans and celebrities like we are, but the champs in here, we all know that losing a fight could get you a bigger fight more than winning a fight sometimes in this business.
Yeah,
so it may potentially lead to him being able to be in another fight if he can go to distance and somehow keep Pitbull Cruz off. I think the only way to keep Pitbull Cruz off is to go back to that old Russian, Cubano style where he's boxing from the outside. But I give it to the kid. They can both crack at short distance, and they're both really dangerous.
In my opinion, it's a very interesting fight. Look, if we get the Pitbull that fought Giovanni Cabrera, we know that movement gives Pitbull problems. Giovanni Cabrera was in the fight with Pitbull in his last fight, and let's be honest, Pitbull didn't look that good. I believe it was a close fight. It was a majority decision win for Pitbull. Okay, we get that Pitbull against Rolly, then I don't know. It might be a competitive fight. But if we get the Pitbull that fought Tank Davis against the Rolly that fought Barroso, then yeah, I think Pitbull is going to run over him. Pitbull is like the Energizer Bunny. He doesn't stop. He just keeps coming, tight defense. And if we get the Pitbull, the Rolly Romero that fought Tank Davis, because when he fought Tank Davis, Rolly was in the fight all the way up into the end until he got caught and he got put to sleep. If we get that Romero against the Pitbull that fought Giovanni Cabrera, then it'll make it an interesting fight, But I know Gilly was saying that Romero's not the same ever since he fought Tank after he got knocked out. He's right. He's a scared fighter. He fights scared, but sometimes when you're scared like that at that level, a scared fighter could be dangerous. The reason I say Rolly could be dangerous is because he does have power. He's got one punch knockout power, and he you don't know where he's coming from. He punches from different angles. He's very awkward. That's the only thing that Pitbull has to look out for. He's got to tighten up on his defense, shorten up on his shots. He's going to come forward. He's like a little Mike Tyson. He works the body. He's good with his hooks. He works behind the jab. He's in great shape. He gets better as the fight goes on. And I see Pitbull pulling out the decision. They're both fighting because they want that rematch. Both of them want a rematch with Tank Davis. And I think the winner of that fight hopefully will get a rematch with Tank.
Hey, can I add something? Can I add something about this fight? The thing about Rolly, this is the thing we got to remember about Rolly, right? Is that his family is Cuban. His current coach is Cuban, but Rolly did not learn to fight in Cuba. So when we talk about the Cuban style, if you're picturing like Rigo, right? If you're picturing at the extreme end, Andy Cruz.
And that's what I'm confused about. I'm like, Rolly has some of the heaviest feet in the country.
Yeah,
he doesn't have good head movement. He's not slick. Where's the Cuban at Rolly? I don't see that.
It's because he grew up in Las Vegas. He didn't learn to fight. He didn't learn to box at La Finca, right? Where Andy Cruz put in his time, where Rigo put in his time, where Gamboa put in his time. And the thing about Ismail Salas, like where he's at, had a lot of success with Cuban fighters, it's been with the guys who've had like hundreds of amateur fights, coming over to the US, kind of struggling to make that transition to professional style fighting. And he's been the guy that's been able to bridge that gap. Whereas with Rolly, he kind of has the opposite problem. It's not that you have to take a finesse fighter and make him more authoritative. It's that you got this really strong guy. And the question you never had with Rolly Romero was about his strength, his conditioning, his punching power. He always has that, but it's like the fine points of boxing where he lost against Tank Davis. He's got outmaneuvered, outboxed, and ran into that shot. Yep. And then with Barroso, like he could not find a way to outbox this old man who hit hard. And so now can he refine Rolly Romero's strength and make him a better technical boxer in the space of one training camp? No, Ismael Salas is a great trainer, but this is a tall task, especially against a guy like Pitbull, who, if he's at his best, is not going to give Rolly time to think about what he wants to do. He's just going to jump on him.
It takes time for a trainer to get a fighter and a trainer, like you said. That's his first camp with Rolly. It's going to take fights to get adjusted and teach him what he really wants to teach him. One fight is not going to be enough.
To me, the best version of Rolly was the version at Fort Tank.
Yeah.
That was the best version of him. Then he got knocked out, and that version left him. Now he's acting like he's a boxer, like he understands distance, like he understands footwork, like he understands proper head movement, and he doesn't understand none of that. You look like somebody that's started boxing at 18 years old and probably was a hell of an athlete in other things, and you're just strong. So if you're not using your strength to your advantage and you're trying to be a boxer, you're not a boxer. When I think of somebody, a Cuban style, I think of somebody that's slick. I think of somebody that wants to hit you and not get hit. The only problem the Cubans have when they turn pro is sitting down on their punches, learning how to sit down on their punches and getting away from the amateur style. All right, I'm moving. I'm moving. I ain't trying to knock you out. I'm just trying to add up the points so I can win. Once they learn how to sit down on their punches, like the kid Andy Cruz, he had to go work with Bozy to learn how to sit down on his punches. Once you learn how to sit down on your punches, you still got that slick style, the head movement, the footwork, the knowing the distance, the angles. When I look at Rolly, I don't see none of that.
Right. It is Lara is a good example too. Even though he's older, but Lara now he's really sitting down more on his shots, and he's got the Cuban style of boxing. He's very slick. He moves. He's a great fighter.
Hey, Raul, let me tell you, old Erislandy Lara is a lot of fun to watch because he's a little bit older now. He doesn't have the footwork anymore. He can't run. He's in the pocket. He's a lot of fun.
More of an exciting fight. You're right about that. Yeah.
But if you ask me, I think he beat Canelo.
That was a close fight.
Oh, yeah. Yes, he did. Yeah, you're right. Very close fight.
Canelo couldn't hit that man with nothing but a body shot. Boop bop, I'm out of here. Boop bop, I'm out of here. Boop bop, I'm out of here.
I think to answer Marcus Hayes' question, I'm a person that admits their biases, right? So if you ask me something about Benavidez versus Canelo, I'm friends with Benavidez. I have to disclose that before someone's, oh yeah, you're just rooting for your friends. You're right. I am. I'm not gonna lie to you. But do I think one person could beat another person in a fight? That's a different story. However, when I'm confronted with these type of fights, I always expect the unexpected, especially when someone has something to prove. And the two of these people, like I said before, have something to prove. It is a make or break fight in terms of some career. In terms of Pitbull, I think he's coming here to not just say, okay, I'm here to survive. I'm here for a check. No, he's here to become champ because he knows that that'll put him in position to fight other people at 140. That'll be huge. That's the winner of Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia that's going to come up, right? There's also Teofimo. Those are giant marquee names. Those are people that will bring incredible amount of revenue. If Rolly catches him in any way, shape, or form coming in at 157, you know what I mean? Then it's going to be a lot more power behind the punch. In terms of him not being a traditional Cuban fighter, that's true. And it's hard for people to adopt a style in 3 months. But unlike the other people, the opponent isn't being switched up at the last minute. You've had a lot of time to prepare. And I never believe boxers when they say, oh, I don't even watch tape. I don't study him. That's cap. You have to be studying someone who's trying to kill you, right? There are more injuries in MMA, but there are more deaths in boxing. All right. I think somebody said at the beginning, you can't play this sport. This is not a sport you play games with. You don't do that. People die in the ring every year. And a person has to be conscientious of that, especially if they're going in the ring with someone that could potentially hurt them or hinder their career. So I don't think that Mr. Romero is taking Pitbull Cruz lightly at all. Whether that matters to Cruz is a whole nother story. When a person comes in fighting for that kind of ambition, it's the difference in between an invading army and somebody that's fighting for their homeland. So if this person says, this is my homeland, my wife and my kids, I'm not going to be able to feed them without this victory, it puts an extra battery in his back. How that plays out when you get hit from an angle, as the champ said, which you may not see coming, those are the punches that hurt, right? Those are the ones that really hurt you, man. Those ones that you don't see coming, not just in boxing, but to quote Mr. Miyagi, that's a lesson for whole life, right? Those punches that you don't see coming are the ones that really hurt you. The betrayals, anything else. But in reality, that's what we have here. We have the unexpected versus the expected. Everybody's expecting Pitbull Cruz to come out hard, to come out heavy, to not fall back. He won a Mexican slugfest, and that's what Rolly said in the press conference. To his credit, he did say, oh, you want a Mexican slugfest? And he said to him in Spanish, which is something I really like, the fact that we're seeing him speak Spanish, even though he can't speak it perfectly. Who cares, right? Come out and just be you. So he said, no, I'll give you exactly what you want. He said, you want to meet me in the middle of the ring? Yo te veo ahí, está bien. That's what he told me.
¿Quién es el más macho?
Right, that's what he said. So, I mean, I think that'll be interesting to see, because if those two are just trading, we know that they both punch really hard. So what we could have is a great, exciting fight for about 3 or 4 rounds. But definitely, I think from the panel, it doesn't matter who one person thinks is going to be there. Most people don't think that this thing is going to a decision. Most people think that this thing is going to be a stoppage or a knockout or a TKO or whatever, however the chips may fall. So again,
can I ask the legend a question, Raul?
Yes, sir.
When you're talking about an A-class fighter or a B-class fighter, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that make them A-class fighters and B-class fighters is they have A-class chins, right?
Right. Durable.
B-class
Take
chins.
a shot. Yeah.
But I haven't seen Rolly knock out an A-class or B-class fighter yet.
You're right. You're right.
So when we say, oh, he got this power, you put me in there with a certain cab driver, I'm gonna look like I got power.
But who's the A-class fighter that Pitbull knocked out?
But all I'm saying is,
He didn't win against Davis, but he held his own enough for him to see what I mean. He held his own. He went the distance with Gervonta Davis that not many people could brag about doing, Gillie. So in that sense, if Rolly could do the same thing he did and go the distance, it sounds fucked up, but that'd kind of be a win for him. I think that would get him even more fights potentially.
And
but he got
gotta understand.
We'll see.
If Pitbull Cruz went the distance with an A+ fighter who's known for punching people's dicks in the dirt, and he hit that man on his chin 15 to 20 times plus, and that kid didn't go nowhere.
And he took it. And when he hit Rolly, he put Rolly to sleep. He put Rolly in another world, in Gillie's world.
Rolly looked like he had a little bit of stuff I be having.
I don't know what he had. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I always see that brought up too, that Gervonta, he don't like to say it, but he was fighting with an injured hand too. I think that's something that not a lot of boxers don't like to mention because it comes off as an excuse. But
no,
Gervonta,
he injured his hand on Pitbull's head.
He broke his hand. So he was already fighting with one hand for 4 rounds. You have to factor that into the fight and say to yourself, honestly, if he had both his hands for those extra 4 rounds, would he have found the mark that he was looking for? He may have gotten a stoppage, so we don't really know.
But my point is, he found the mark 15 to 20 times before he hurt his hand. And that kid didn't buckle, didn't daze, did nothing. It was like this.
But also remember, no. Here's the thing, Gillie. Here's the thing. It wasn't this. It was this. Pitbull defense is actually underrated. All them shots we saw Gervonta hit him in the face with, he blocked 90% of them. So he do got a chin That's great. When it's covered by a glove, that's fine. But when the chin is not covered by the glove, that's what we waiting to see. I still haven't seen the highlights. I'm gonna go rewatch them as soon as we off right now.
But
please.
I remember
but Tech,
Javante
hold on.
blocking
Can I
most
jump
of those
in here?
shots.
But that's part of it, right? Like, it's not his job to go out there and see how hard of a shot he can take directly on his chin if he leaves his hands down, right?
Right.
But I think the bigger point that everyone's kind of dancing around here, Tank Davis is 5'5" and has cast a shadow over 2 huge fights, because when they announced the Haney-Garcia fight, all these guys could talk about, the two of them, was which one of them got their ass kicked by Tank the least, right? And that's how they were trying to sell that fight instead of selling it on their own merits. Now, this fight, Rolly versus Pitbull, like, 2 guys, the biggest thing in their career is a loss to Tank Davis. And now, like, this is how we're talking about them, measuring them against Tank Davis. How did they lose to Tank Davis? But really now, with the 2 of them in the ring, this is each of them their chance to establish their own identity apart from Tank Davis. Yeah, it leads to a Tank Davis rematch potentially. But at a certain point, like, you can't live your whole career off a loss to Tank Davis. Yeah, I lost well to Tank Davis. Okay, but what are your signature wins and not your signature losses? And, you know, obviously Cruz did a lot better against Tank Davis than Rolly did. And Tank is sort of the measuring stick, and he's the common opponent. But again, what's important, I think, for these two in this fight is for one of them to put on a performance that makes people remember that win instead of remembering that loss.
All right, the main event, I think Fundora is going to put an action-packed fight like he always does. He's a warrior. I mean, he comes to fight. But I think Tim is just more technical, just overall a more well-rounded fighter. He's smarter in the ring. I think Tim Tszyu breaks him. I think Tim Tszyu breaks him in the second half of the fight, maybe stops him in late 9th, 10th round. And for Rolly and Pitbull, man, it's going to be a very interesting fight, because I believe that you know, Rolly, like, I'm with Gillie, like what he said. You know, he said that he fights scared. Rolly fights scared, but a guy, when he fights scared, he's dangerous. You don't know where he's getting, especially the way he fights. He does have power. He hits you from different angles. You know, so that's the only thing that Pitbull needs to look out for. But it wouldn't surprise me if Rolly body slams Pitbull a couple of times, because he's gonna hold the crap out of him. He's gonna hold him, and you know, he's gonna wrestle him. He used to do wrestling when he was younger, and so he's gonna wrestle him. He's gonna be holding out to him. But I think Pitbull's constant pressure will end up stopping Rolly, or you know what, get disqualified from just trying to survive and hold. That's what I think, and Pitbull will win.
All right, and Immortal, what are your thoughts? What are you expecting to see on March 30th?
In terms of the main event, I love Fundora. I think he's a game fighter. I think that he's brave for jumping up here and just saying, hey, listen, I don't care. But then again, that comes with the territory, like we were just saying in the last one. I just think that Mr. Tszyu is just too comfortable in the pocket. And I think that if Fundora is going to keep the game close, I say Tim Tszyu by KO. And that's probably, I would say, in the later rounds. In terms of the second one, that one, I don't know. I would leave it to chance. There's a part of me that really is rooting for Pitbull, and a part of me that's rooting for Rolly. I like both of these fighters. Like, personally, I like them. Like I said, I can't not claim my biases, but I have no personal biases here. I would say that, you know, to me, a lot of people think that if it goes the distance, it'll go to Pitbull. And if Pitbull doesn't see the angle, like the champ said, and he gets cracked with, you know, basically someone who's coming in at super welterweight, you know what I mean? Not at 140. That's going to be the weight of the fight. Because I think that what we're going to see is Pitbull Cruz, that's maybe 142, 143, up against the guy who's 157, you know, 155. That's a very big weight to give up to a person. But again, if a person is going to fight scared, it doesn't matter how much you weigh. If you're going to sit down, use your size and your power advantage, that's what's going to give him the advantage. I say if it goes the distance, maybe Pitbull gets the edge. But if there's a knockout in the middle of it, I'll flip a coin. You know, I'll make that bet. You know what I mean? Not really in my mind because it's haram, so I don't want to gamble like that. But I would say that if it goes to cracked out in the first round and he tries to stand in the ring with him, maybe like the champ said, Rolly will find an angle that Pitbull is not aware of, and that would be his key to victory. But if it goes the distance, then it favors Mr. Cruz.
All right. And last but not least, Gillie. Who do you
I
think?
think Pitbull whitewashes Rolly, easy work. And I think that like all the good commentators and the legend on here said, boxing is a mental game. I think that Tim Tszyu will no longer be there mentally. I think Fedora will upset him because I think the highs of, oh, I'm fighting Keith Thurman, and then being let down to like, oh, now I'm fighting Fedora. He just got knocked out. And I think Fedora's like, I was fighting him. Oh shit, I get a chance to fight Tim Tszyu for everything. I think mentally it's just two different places, and I think Fedora will upset Tim Tszyu.